Blog Talk Radio.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live this September 8th, 2016. Want to welcome everybody to the show. Of course, we are live every Thursday nights from 6 to 8 p.m. Central or 7 to 9 Eastern Time, depending on where you are in the country. Great show for you tonight. We're going to, of course, start it off as normal with Coach's Corner with two great professionals here in just a minute. I'm going to bring them on just a moment or two. But let me remind everybody, of course, that we are live every Thursday nights, as I said, from 6 to 8 p.m. Central. Quickest way to find us is go to blogtalkradio.com. Up in the search key, type Golf Talk Live, and that will take you to the main page. And if you can't join us live, not to worry, just go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live and scroll down into the on-demand section. All the programs, of course, are auto-recorded, so you can listen to them when it's convenient for you. Always love to have people call in when they can, and we're certainly inviting you to do so, whether you during the Coach's Corner or when my special guest comes on later this evening. And you can do so by calling area code 646-716-4667. Also, email me any comments or questions about the show to ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And, of course, I update on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, and of course, LinkedIn. And you can find me on any of those great social media platforms. As I said, I got a great show for you tonight, starting off with Coach's Corner. And then the second half of the show, I've got something a little bit different. Haven't done here on the show really before. It's a two-part series. Tonight we're going to do the first part of a special two-part series on how to really grow your golf business. And it's not just for the golf industry per se. It's also really for any of you entrepreneurs out there, because part one, of course, is going to be 7 tips to growing your golf business. And then part 2, which will air next week, will be people and relationship building tips for your business. So that's going to be a little bit different. But certainly we're targeting people in the golf profession with the first part, but it can really apply to anybody. And then the second show next week, of course, is to a much broader audience. And joining me to talk about that in the second half of the show, of course, is my very special guest, Mr. Peter Willis, and he is the president and founder of the Willis organization. But let me bring on the guys here. First up, of course, on the Coach's Corner is John Hughes. He's a PGA Master Professional, also the vice president of North Florida PGA Section. And he was the recipient of the Horton Smith Award back in 2013. And also he is ranked as one of the top 30 instructors by Golf Tips magazine. And certainly right up there with him, of course, is my next guest is Brandon Stooksbury. He's the director of instruction at the prestigious Idle Hour Club in Macon, Georgia. And he's been considered to be ranked in Golf Digest as best in state instructor rankings for Georgia, and honored as the 2015 Central Georgia PGA Teacher of the Year. He also specializes in competitive player development and enjoys teaching players really of all levels, from you beginners out there right up to the PGA Tour. So, John and Brandon, welcome to Coach's Corner.
Thank you, Ted.
Thanks, Ted. Looking forward to another great show.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you, as always. Okay, guys, just a quick side note. Of course, we were talking a little bit of football here just off the air before we started. Of course, we're coming into the beginning of the SEC season. So, John, I'm going to ask you first. Who's your team in your household or teams? And then, Brandon, I'll let you chime in as well.
Well, because this is a national show, it's not just SEC season, it's football season. Ted, come on now. My team happens to be a historic one. 9 years ago, they made a statement and almost did this past Saturday with Brendan's small little band of volunteers, Appalachian State University.
Brandon, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I'm very happy to say that now, after we squeaked by with a fumble on the 1-yard line that rolled over the end zone, and we recovered in overtime, John and I can officially be friends again.
That's right.
It was tough there for a little while. I was worried about our relationship, but I think we're back to good now. Sorry, John, for a hard-fought victory that, in all honesty, probably should have been yours. But
in 25 more years, we'll be more fit.
Yeah, that's right. Well, both of you certainly played a better game than, of course, the team here that I bank on. That's Auburn, of course, the Auburn Tigers. I don't know what's been happening to them to the last few years, but they've sort of been rolling with the tide, no pun intended. But we'll see what happens with them this year. But, all right, this is a golf show, so we've got to get back to the topic at hand. All right, guys, I wanted to talk a little bit about tonight on the Coaches Corner panel. I wanted to talk a little bit about teaching and learning. There's a few different principles that I want to cover tonight on the show. And what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to talk about from your own perspectives and then also from your students' perspectives maybe a little bit. And this will help some of those golfers out there maybe understand the relationship between the instructor and student as well. So the first one, of course, obviously every student has picked up at some point a bad habit or two, some more than others. And obviously we have to allow them some opportunities to sort of mourn the loss of those bad habits as we work with them to move into some better habits. So, Brandon, I'm going to start with you tonight for something different. I want you to talk a little bit about, obviously, you've had some bad habits, I'm sure, along the way as you were learning to play this great game, and obviously you've seen many of your students come in with maybe some less than perfect habits. What did you do to sort of break that, and what sort of a time frame did you give them to really sort of move and get some momentum into a more positive learning process?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that, quite frankly, I think most people fail to even consider. I think it was Socrates at one point that said, when trying to change a habit, focus more on moving new instead of changing old. And I think that's a really important topic that most people don't understand. It's not really about, I would word it differently than saying changing a habit and more building new motion to replace old motion. Okay. And so I think a lot of times what happens when people are trying to get better, what they end up doing is they end up trying to find comfort in a change. Right. And that just doesn't happen. The very nature of change means it's different, and different is never comfortable. And so one of the biggest things that I try to get through to students very early on in the process is, look, if I'm asking you to do X, don't try to make X feel like Y. Just let's try to feel X, and then we can talk about what X feels like and then try to feel X again. Right. And so if you can get people through that initial phase of understanding that it's not going to be comfortable, quite frankly, it's the opposite of comfort. It's pretty uncomfortable, but that's okay. That's part of it. If you can get them past that, then it starts to be a lot easier for them. Time frame's a great question because – no, I'm good. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, I got this. I'm standing while my wife's going in a restaurant here, and he's asking me if I'm okay. I'm on the phone. Sorry. Anyway, time frame's an interesting topic because it depends totally on the person, and it depends on the move you're trying to change. And so the quicker the person understands that it's okay to feel different and embraces that difference, then that person's going to get better and start to change that habit a lot faster. That also being said, right, the bigger the part of the body or the bigger the motion or the more finite the motion is, meaning if I were asking you to change your body motion, it might be a little more challenging because there's a lot of pieces involved, or if I'm asking you to change the angle of the club face at the moment of the strike, that happens in a very, very tiny amount of time, and it's got to be timed perfectly. Both of those will require a lot more effort to build new habit because they're very challenging motions that either involve a lot of the body or a very tiny little piece that has to be timed perfect. So timing is totally dependent on person and what you're trying to change, but you gotta learn to accept difference. Okay, faster you do that, right, faster it's going to change.
Right. Well said, Brandon. John, Brandon raises a couple of interesting points. First one being obviously it depends on what you're looking to change, but also he talked about how people have a certain comfort level. They get into a routine or what have you, and they're comfortable. For instance, a lot of people talk about, well, I've been playing with this grip this way for many, many years. It just feels right to me, but it may not be the correct grip. So again, just sort of playing off of what Brandon's talked about here, and maybe talking about some of your own experiences. How do we incorporate it and get some momentum in a more positive direction, while we sort of discard or shed the skin, if you will, of some areas that maybe are not in the best interest of the golfer?
Well, I'm going to harken back to a conversation Brandon and I had with you, I believe it was last month, as well as something he said just today. Let's deal with the X and the Y first. I say the same thing that Brandon says. I say it a little differently. So you've got to be able to feel the difference between X and Y before you can ingrain and incorporate X, meaning that you and your habits and your kinesthetic awareness of what your habits are ingrained. And until you can feel a significant enough difference where the eyebrows go up and the jaw drops to the ground and you go, wow, I felt that. It's at that point where Brandon's absolutely correct that you can discuss what that new feeling is. And in that discussion, you detail it and you put it to good use by trying to repeat what it is that you desire to do versus focusing on the comparison of what it should feel like versus what it does feel like. It has no relevance, because from the moment we pop out of the womb, we're hardwired a certain way to learn. And that goes back to the second thing he said last month about him and his daughter, teaching his daughter how to throw the ball. That story, Brandon, has really hit me like a ton of bricks over the past month, and I've looked back at a lot of things within my teaching practice, within my career as a golfer, and just as an athlete. And Brandon was absolutely right. When you pop out of the womb, I'm going to say it a little bit differently. When you pop out of the womb, you have no definition of fear. And because there's no fear, you're willing to just go about your business and learn from trial and error, for lack of a better way of saying it. The example I give people is when you watch an infant learn to walk, that infant biophysically can't balance itself yet because the equilibrium isn't developed enough. So when they go too fast, they topple over. But what's toppling over? As an adult, we equate that to a mistake, an error, a flaw, a fault. And the infant doesn't. It's just part of the learning curve because there is no definition of that fear of failure. They get up, and what do? They try it again, but they typically try it at a slower pace. And that slower pace is dictated by what the equilibrium can balance and what it can't at a particular speed. And when I explain this to my students, that, hey, let's not be in a hurry. I know you are, but let's not be in a hurry. Let's give your equilibrium a chance to balance all this out because it's hardwired that way. I can sometimes get them in a roundabout way to forget their fears, that just to sort of rely on instinct, that hardwiring we're born with and will die with. Unfortunately, as we get older, we forget about that and try to shortcut it to a certain extent. And it's at that point where you basically negate any type of learning when you're not utilizing what's innate in you as a human first, as your own person second. So as I try to have people understand their learning curve, it is different for everybody. It may be faster for one, slower for the other. That's based on a lot of variables. But at the same time, the basis to that learning curve is still the same because we are human. And there's only but 3 or 4 different ways we're going to learn as humans. We as good coaches have to adapt to what's the predominant way each of our students are going to learn and adapt what we provide them in a manner in which they can do it the most efficiently, the most effectively, and the most sustainably.
Right. Well said, guys. And obviously there is no specific time frame for each person. And again, as you pointed out, John and Brandon as well, it really is going to depend on the individual and how quickly they learn and the method in which they learn. The second and third principle are sort of work hand in hand, but I'm going to do them independently for a reason. And Brandon, I'm going to go back to you here. Under principle 2, of course, we're talking about the willingness to change. Once we've established that changes need to be made, I think one of the mistakes that often happens with teachers and coaches is we have to remember to ask the question, is this individual willing to make the changes, and what changes are they willing to make? Some students we've all dealt with that certainly are all up for a complete makeover, if you will, and then other students that maybe don't want to mess with what they've got, but they just want a quick tip or two to sort of help navigate around the course. So Brandon, what do you do in that area there, when it comes to actually making the changes? How do you assess the situation with your students and say, we can make some changes here. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to spend the time and commit? What are some of the questions that you're going to ask them to get them to think about that?
Wow.
I know it's a lot.
I just, it's so I was taught very early on, right? I always have this standard question that I ask people when I see them for the first time. I work at a country club, but our range and our learning center is open to the public. So I get a good mix of members that I know personally, and people that come in that are looking to do longer term, improvement kind of programs. And so I get a good taste of both. I kind of have this standard definition or standard question that I ask people to answer when they come to my tee, and that's, if I had a magic wand and I could wave it around right now and we would be, an hour would just fast forward and we'd be to the end of this hour, what do you want to get out of this? Mm-hmm. What are you looking to get from me in the hour that you're paying for? And I get the gamut of answers. Right.
Sure.
And the guy, and I'm sure John will laugh and agree when he hears this. Consistency is probably the number one. I need to hit it a little farther is number 2. The problem with that is there really is no such thing as consistency, meaning this game is all about being able to adapt to an ever-changing environment and an ever-changing golf swing, in my personal opinion.
Right.
And so I have to have this conversation about, what's consistency. I don't care where your ball curves or what it does. I just care about whether or not it's going to do that. And so then we got to go into the conversation about why. And then once we figure that out, it becomes about what to do instead. That's a tough one. It's a tough one because people don't always appreciate what it takes to change the habits that you're talking about or that you ask about in the previous question. And so it requires a lot of work. And I don't necessarily mean a lot of time hitting balls. I mean a lot of time doing away with fear, which was an excellent point that John made, getting past the idea that a mistake is not a mistake. It's an opportunity to realize you did something that wasn't ideal for what you were trying to do, and it's an opportunity to learn to do something different. And it takes a little bit of time to just keep doing it and keep experiencing it. And so people don't often give that enough credit and give it enough respect on the time it takes. Sometimes you get people that say, look, I'm going to Pebble Beach next week, and I'm shanking it. Help. As a golf instructor, those are tough lessons for me to give because I know that whatever I tell them will be fleeting at best. I can get them out of the shanks, but they're going to have the shanks next week or next month or whenever they pick the golf club up again because they haven't given it that time. And so I feel like it's malpractice of me to not at least mention that to them. Our Mr. Jones, I understand you're going on your golf trip. I'll do what I can to help, but you need to understand this is, like putting a Band-Aid over a gushing wound. This is not really fixing anything. I need you to come back and see me and let me talk a little bit more in detail about the pattern of motion that's causing the shank or whatever it is, and we can talk about how to fix it moving forward so you're not right here in front of me next year before your golf trip. I think you have to have that conversation with them, but, it's that whole idea of giving them – you got to give them a little bit of what they want before you can really give them what they need. Sometimes you got to give them that quick fix to show them that you can, and then they're a little more open to having a conversation of what it might look like if they invest some time and resources into making movement pattern changes.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, because you're exactly right. I think a lot of people sometimes coming in are a little bit skeptical. You know, they've been playing the way they have for a long time, and they don't know how to fix it, and so they want a little help, but they don't want to risk the chance that if they have a major overhaul, that it's going to make their game worse than what it currently is. So they're very apprehensive. And John, I want to just twist this just a little bit here on the same thought here. As I started off the question with, a lot of pros sometimes don't ask the question, is the student willing to make the change? And a lot of times just insist that the changes be made. But if the student's really not willing to commit to those changes, then it's really a waste of time, not only for the student but also for the instructor. So again, this goes back to the initial assessment and conversations that an instructor needs to have with their students to make sure what they want to get out of the lessons and what they want to, what their short and long-term goals are. So again, let's sort of wrap that question up, if we can, a little bit, John, from that perspective.
Sure. I would tell you, I think Brandon would agree from that consistency statement. Normally, a great golf coach is going to be able to size up the student, 3 to 4 or 5 questions, watching nonverbal cues, listening to the questions, and trying to put the lifestyle pattern together without ever asking, hey, are you committed or not? There's obvious commitments where you have the elite athlete trying to make a team or trying to win a tournament, or maybe the not-so-elite athlete but still has the same kind of goals. And right up front that these people are more committed, and you don't have to ask the question. The other third, it's obvious. They're not there to do anything other than get the quick fix, the Band-Aid, the fleeting moment. And
right.
If you see them again, great. If not, no big deal. The questions you're talking about tend to fall into that middle third, trying to figure out the variance of commitment. Is it a day? Is it a week? Is it once a month? Is it every day of the month? How many hours is it? Do they understand what it takes to improve or change or create, I should say, one new habit? If you talk to rehab specialists, and a great example of this is Rosie Greer, who played for the Colts and the Rams, chronic alcoholic, was forced by the Rams to go to rehab. And in the late 1960s, groundbreaking rehab, where he was forced into a room with things to do with his hands. And what came out of that was he's now a world-famous artist using crochet, macrame, knitting, that kind of thing as art.
Right.
And here's the meanest guy on the planet football-wise, but here he is, a meek and mild guy as an artist. He learned that through learning that he had to fix a habit, and that habit was not necessarily putting the alcohol through his body. It was taking his hand to his mouth. And how do you change that? And if you talk to rehab specialists based on that and further scientific study, 21 days, 1 hour, 21 consecutive days, and you can ingrain a new habit. These new habits, as Brendan said, replace the old. The old always stay there. So as we're asking these questions, what I'm trying to figure out as a coach, and I'm sure Brendan's doing the same thing as you are, Ted, if I put energy and effort, and time and commitment into this student, what not only are they going to get out of their experience with me, but what are they going to do after I'm gone, when I'm not around?
Right.
And you have to tailor that to that particular person. You can weed out the top third, you can weed out the bottom third. It's that middle third we're talking about here that isn't necessarily a gray area. If you're understanding how people learn, you're asking the right questions, you're observing, but most importantly, that student in front of me is being honest. If you're not honest with yourself, you're just fooling yourself, so you have to be honest with your coach. So if you're in that middle third, so we can give you something that makes sense short term, you feel some improvement, makes sense long term, to where, as Brandon said, hey, it's all about movement patterns and here's some things that long-term is going to help you out so you don't have to come see me as often.
Right, and that's a great, great story too. Really, to sort of draw that analogy about Rosie Greer. That was a very interesting story to share with the listeners here, because it is true. And John, you also raise another point too, as Brandon has. Change can come easy if the student's also willing to make that commitment. I mean, we as teaching professionals, coaches, can certainly, work really magic in many ways with some positive changes. But if the student's just going to go home and not sort of work on their own on some of the different techniques and fundamentals and drills that may be given to them, then it's not going to show any sort of measurable results. And this, of course, adds to the frustration. I want to approach this. John, take a deep breath here, because I'm going to start with you this time. So take a deep breath or two, and then I'll call on you here in just a second. But the third principle is, obviously we talked just about the willingness to change, but here's something that has to be considered as well, and that's principle number 3, and that's the student must be able to make the change. In other words, some students just aren't physically capable of making some of the changes that may be required. What do we do in a case like that, John, where we've got a student, we've identified some changes, they're just maybe due to their physical ineptness or what have you, or unable to understand what's needed to be done, just are not physically able to accomplish that. How do we navigate around that and still maybe accomplish the same goals, or can we?
It can be done from an instruction standpoint of view, again, asking the right questions. Are you physically impaired? Do you have any issues I need to know about that are going to prohibit you from doing certain things the way you want it done? Is the way I phrase it. I don't ever want people to feel like it's me and my highway or get off the highway. It's actually the opposite. It's my clientele's highway. But I want to make sure that they're in the right car to drive that highway. Is the best way to put it. And then the second most logical thing I can tell you there is I'm very honest with people. The more educated, the more experienced I've become as a coach, the more honest I am to, you know what, you don't have the core stability to get back that far or to move through as fast as you want, or you're imbalanced right to left side, or whatever the case may be. And I have them understand that, because if I'm not having them understand that in an empathetic way, then I'm basically in sort of a nasty way scamming them. I'm trying to have them believe that they can do something that I know they can't. And I'd rather them know that there's still possibility, but in order for that possibility to manifest itself, you have to understand what's going to be required. So I'll give you the best example I can give you, and Brandon, you may see this with the people that pop in. They're not necessarily the better athletes you teach, but most people can't finish a swing. Their belt buckle's facing in a direction that's not towards the target. And that has more to do with hamstring and glute flexibility versus them being able to turn or having their arms turn their body kind of thing, which is what most people think it ought to be. So if I see that and give them enough exercises and pats on the back and positive reinforcement, yet it's still not happening, I have zero problem going to them and saying, you know what, here's what I see. I'm not an expert at this, but I do know what I'm looking at, and I can refer you to someone if you really want to make that change. If that's something you don't want to do, then let's work within this limitation to get you where you want to go, with the caveat of being there's going to be a limit as to how far you go, and that limit's based on what your limits are. And 100% of the time people understand it, mainly because I'm being transparent. It's real critical that the student be transparent with him or herself for that agreement to take place. If you're not honest with yourself, that your core is not stable enough, or your left side's not strong enough, or you're imbalanced, or whatever it is, again, you're fooling yourself. Don't fool yourself. It's not, you're wasting your time. And I've refunded people because I felt like they were.
Right.
It's not this isn't rocket science. It's all about having fun. I'd rather teach you how to have fun with your limitations and have you accept them versus ignore them or even try to negatively enforce things upon those limitations. That could be hurtful both short and long term in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's some great points. And Brandon, I want to sort of play off of what John just said about the fun component, with at the same time, of course, keeping in theme with the question that I asked. A lot of players out there that maybe just don't have, for whatever the reasons, maybe John named a few examples, maybe just don't have the physical capacity to make the change, but mentally they haven't sort of wrapped their mind. And I use the example particularly with older golfers that maybe don't have the physical ability that they once did, the glute strength, the mid-core strength, that sort of thing, aren't able to finish the swing as well as they should, but they want to still be able to play like they did in their 20s, so they're going to be kind of pushing and wanting some help to do that. What do we do in a case with players like that? Obviously, ultimately, we want them, as John said, to get out there and have some fun. Do we allow them to continue their stubbornness, or do we try to guide them into a more realistic phase of their golf game?
Well, I think you always have to try to guide them. I think part of our job as the person that they are depending on and looking to be their golf guy, if you will, you've got to try to guide them. I think you've got to try to offer the option. Here are the exercises, here are the stretches, here are the whatever. I'm with John. I don't have any expertise in that. I know enough to be dangerous, which is why I avoid it. And so, look, I can refer you to the guy here at the club or to the guy down the street that has some knowledge in this. He and I can talk together about what I need your body to do or what you need your body to do for golf, and then he can help you. I think we have to try. More often than not, it has been my experience in the arenas that I've taught in. Most of the time, people just don't do a lot of that. Now, I know there are guys that run, nice academies and deal with excellent athletes all the time. Other guys are all in. You give them an exercise program and they'll do it. At my club, they don't do it. Okay, they just don't. And I don't blame them for it, right? I mean, they're working, they're trying to get better at golf. They just don't do it. And John, I hope you don't string me up when I say this, but I got to be honest with you. When they start having those issues going on, and they're not willing to do what they need to do to get their body better, then as an instructor, I got to start going off script a little. I got to start doing things that you won't find in books, doing things that you won't find in videos or you won't hear about on the Golf Channel. I mean, I got to start doing some things that are going to allow them to hit it solidly or as close to as solidly as we can get it up in the air a little bit, and try to get them to where they can at least move it in the direction of the target and have some fun. And things that if I said in a Facebook forum, man, I'd be tarred and feathered, right? How in the world as an instructor are you going to teach a guy to hang back on his back leg and sweep it off the ground and flip his hands at it? Well, if he's got a bum left knee and he's got a bad left hip and he can't sit on his left leg and rotate and hit down and compress, then that's the only way he can get it up in the air. So if he wants to play golf and he's paying me to get him better, you better believe I'm going to let him hang back and teach him how to put it in the back of his stance and sweep and throw, right? I mean, you won't read that in a magazine, but that's the only way the guy can get it in the air. And so I think at some point as instructors, you've got to be willing to go in a direction that is a little bit counterintuitive to what you teach most people, because these people have, some of these restrictions, and they either don't have the time or resources or desire to do anything about them from a physical standpoint. They're paying you to get them better at golf. And so I'm with John. You either do what you have to do to get them better, or you reach a point where you're like, look, here's your money back. I don't feel like you're getting a whole lot out of this. I don't want to waste your time. It's not fair for you to pay me for wasted time. But, let's just move on. And I think eventually it comes to that point.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point, and it goes to a conversation that we've had here, and John, I think you might have been on this. We've talked about over the last few years about this very thing, about putting everybody in sort of the same box. Everybody is different. I think one thing that the coaches and the teaching professionals out there, they're seeing it in real time. They're seeing what's really happening out there, and a lot of times, and again, this is not to criticize any forum, but sometimes when we see things on the Golf Channel or we see things in some of the publications, even though they're professing to teach to the masses, a lot of times they're going off a generic template, if you will. And not everybody. Brandon, you just gave an excellent example. I mean, somebody that maybe has a bum left knee, or maybe some of our wounded veterans that are coming over here that have, had the misfortune of losing a limb or part of a limb, now have to make physical adjustments to be able to continue to play, and that may be, leaning more onto their left side or right side depending on the circumstance, and so we have to make those adjustments. And you're exactly right, both of you, that if the students are not willing to make the adaptations and the changes that are necessary, then there does have to come a point in time that we would love to work with you, but if you're not willing to sort of make that commitment and be realistic about the changes that need to be made and be willing to make that commitment back as well, then we're just sort of like two gears running in the opposite direction. We're just grinding all the time, and it's not beneficial.
Let me preface and temper that a little bit. I think everybody listening should understand that we know when you come to us, you are willing. That
sure.
People are willing because they called us and set the appointment and they showed up and they're there wanting some guidance. And it is our job to do that. And that's why what we're saying right now is, hey, are you or aren't you willing? A lot of times, correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon or Ted, a lot of times that unwillingness manifests itself in that first hour lesson based on, wow, I didn't know this is what it was going to take.
Yeah.
And I think for us as instructors, when we're able to soften that blow a bit, that here's one thing, just do this one thing. It makes it a little bit simpler. It softens the blow of willingness and unwillingness and creates that moment of excitement to where they may have gone through this emotional turmoil in their heart going, man, I'm not going to devote this much time. I can't do it. I've got a wife. I got a kid. I got 2 jobs. I got 2 mortgages. I got to do this. I got to do that. But if you get them to do that one simple little thing that accomplishes what it is that they're after, we as coaches have succeeded. You, the student, you, the person who comes to see Brandon, Ted, and I, be willing to accept that one thing may be your nirvana that gets you to your utopia.
Right.
That's the spur of willingness that you need. It doesn't have to be as bad as it sounds. All it takes is this one small little thing that can provide the willingness, provide the inspiration for you to, okay, I got 3 kids, they're all at soccer practice, let me go hit some balls down the street, I'm not going to miss much, kind of thing. You'll find a way. But don't just block it out because it sounds too difficult or doesn't fit. You made the effort to come see us. Keep an open mind. If you're unwilling, let us know. Most good coaches are going to let you know what that one simple thing is.
Right. Well said. And again, we certainly want to encourage those tuning into the show tonight. We want you to come out and connect with us, and we certainly are very eager and willing to help you in any way we can. All we're really trying to say is, number one, you have to be realistic with your goals. You have to decide first off what your goals are. But then this is where the discussion part comes in with your local teaching professional or coach that you're working with. Is there needs to be that dialogue and discussion up front to decide what your goals are, talk about your goals, what steps need to be taken to help you reach some of those goals, and are you willing to put in some time and effort to do that? But at the same time, John, you raised a great point. Sometimes it can be just one issue or one tweak that can sort of ignite that passion to help them to want to continue on, and we have to be willing to do that as well. And sometimes I think that we have to be careful that we don't sort of impose our own will on the student as well. When we see somebody in there coming in that maybe just wants to do some minor changes, that we don't get too aggressive either and do that. I want to talk about just here in sort of the last few minutes. We got about 20 minutes left here, guys. Is two areas, and this can be certainly on the practice tee. Brandon, I'm going to go to you, but obviously this is more of a actual playing circumstance. But there's actually three, but we're not going to have time to do all three. The first one, of course, is confidence. The first principle. I think we understand that. Obviously, through repetition and through playing more often, we're going to build some confidence. But concentration is something that a lot of amateurs have difficulty with. They're just not able to concentrate. And I'm not just talking about, on the first tee, and maybe there might be some people coming up in golf carts and that, but they're just not able to focus and concentrate at the task at hand. What are some things, Brandon, that you do? And then, John, I want you to chime in as well, that you do to help your students with that area of their game and being able to focus and concentrate on the tasks at hand.
Well, that's an easy question. I thought you were going to ask what can't we concentrate on and can't get done.
Yep. Brandon?
Well, here's what I would say. I would tell you that process starts by helping them to understand what they should be concentrating on, because I think a lot of people in our game misconstrue what it means to concentrate and have no concept whatsoever of how or what to actually concentrate on. The best in the world are the best. They can turn it on when they need to, when they need to analyze lie, when they need to analyze wind, when they need to read a yardage, when they need to visualize a shot, and then right before they pull the trigger, they can turn it off and they can go. Because when you tell most amateur golfers, not all, but most amateur golfers to concentrate, then you find them standing over the golf ball for about 35 seconds, thinking of goodness knows what, before they pull the trigger. And that's not what I would want when I would try and get someone to concentrate. That's true. So I think you have to be real careful when you tell people, hey, concentrate on it, right? Because then it tenses everything up and locks everything down. Sorry, did you say something there, Ted?
Sounds like we lost Ted, Brandon.
Right. I lost a little bit of that, Brandon, but we're here. I was just making the point that you need. I was making the point that you have to be careful when you tell folks to concentrate, because it ends up introducing a lot of tension. And so concentration and focus is about realizing what your task at hand is, analyzing the circumstances around the golf shot, figuring out what club to play. At that point, concentration's over and it's go time, right? I'll give you a real quick analogy, right? Imagine I put out 30 feet worth of 6-inch wide board, okay? Very easy to walk across that board. If I put 30 feet of it over the grass and ask you to walk from one end to the other, without touching the ground, you could do it no problem. Agreed? I put that 6-foot board now over a 3,000-foot canyon. And I say to the guy that's about to step over, now concentrate, Jimmy. Jimmy's got no chance. Jimmy's going to fall to his death at the bottom of that canyon on a simple task that he could do without, while he was chewing gum and tapping his head. But I told him to concentrate, and now I've introduced tension into a system that can't operate in the presence of tension. And so I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but that would be my answer, is be careful what you concentrate on so that you don't concentrate too long and too much on trying to move when that concentration will kill that movement. Right. And one of the others that's well said again, Brandon. John, I think Brandon's right, and we don't need to go into it too in depth here because I think he pretty much summed it up. But obviously, golfers need to have some sort of focus or concentration on the tasks at hand. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree with Brandon, and I'm going to pick up where he left off real quickly. When you get Jimmy or whatever his name is to walk that 6-inch board across a canyon, what's become the difference? It's become that the fear of falling. And the concentration has now become concentrated on the fear versus the task at hand, which is more or less a success story should you complete it. So one of the examples I give my students, and I've actually did this for a year. I was at a golf school, and I had a small little 12-by-12 classroom that was part of a bigger building. And when it rained, I'd go in and do this experiment. I'd ask people if they were right or left-handed, and at the time I was playing a lot of pub darts in competitive leagues. So I had a dartboard up in my room, and I'd ask them, are you left or right-handed? And if they were right-handed, I'd give them darts, and I'd ask them to throw the dart at the board. Just throw it at the board. And if 4 out of 10 hit the board, I was lucky. There was a whole lot of marks on that wall when I left that golf school when I took my dartboard down. But the point of the matter here is it expands upon that board analogy that Brandon just used, that give you a simple task, yet it's different, or you're fearing that you can't do it with a weaker part of your body. Where does your concentration go to? And it's similar in a golf swing. It'll go to, well, how do I hold this start? And how do I throw this start? And how do I do this? And how do I do that? When you're concentrating in golf on those things, how can you focus? And there is a difference between concentration and focus. So if I would go back to these same people and say, you know what? I want you to think of one thing and one thing only. Hit the bullseye. And when they did that, all 10 darts would hit the board. And most of them would be inside the triple circle. The difference being there, if you ask Jimmy on the 6-inch beam to walk 30 feet over a canyon, do you tell him to look down and concentrate on the board? No, you have them look forward. That's what waiters and waitresses do with full trays of drinks. They're not thinking about the tray of drinks. They're looking forward. Where am I going with this thing? And all they're trying to do is balance it. I think when it comes to concentration and asking people to concentrate on something, the simpler you make it, the better, and more highly focused you make it, the better, especially when it comes to visual sensation. Because when you do that, it takes the mind off of the process and allows the body to execute the plan that you're already capable of doing, whether you realized it or not.
Yeah, and that's a great follow-up as well, John. And that sort of leads into the last, and I mean, both of you pretty much kind of covered a lot of it on this third point, and that's anxiety control. Obviously, a lot of people have anxieties, very nervous on the golf course, especially, as I said earlier, coming up to the first tee or even in the final holes of a tournament. Maybe they're not quite as confident as they were earlier in the round because they're in contention. So things like breathing regularly, staying, physically loose, and sort of maintaining in the mindset, if you will, their pre-shot routine when it comes applicable, I think are some great points as well. Just very quickly on both, because we're almost out of time. But Brandon, on anxiety, again, same thing. It boils down to sort of hand in hand with concentration. Some players get a little bit anxious in that when they're getting out and playing on a golf course. Any thoughts or advice that you'd like to give the listeners out there on how they can better adapt to handle their anxiety?
Yeah, here's what I would say. I would tell you that anxiety, in my opinion, a lot of times stems from someone who reacts to each shot as they see it. Here's what I mean by that. There are lots of ways to make a 4. Okay, I played, I don't care to tell you, I'll embarrass myself a little. I played a par 5 the other day. I topped my driver, and when I say topped, I mean cold topped it. Topped my driver, topped the 3-wood, topped the second 3-wood, hit a 7-iron thin about 40 yards over the green, knocked the sand wedge up there to 5 inches and tapped it in for 5. And so I walked away with the same score as a guy who hit the perfect drive, the perfect layup, hit the perfect sandwich in there, and just barely lift the birdie putt out and made 5. Anxious people tend to, or people that get anxious are anxious a lot of times because they're reacting to the fact that they made a poor golf swing with a driver, or they made a poor golf swing with the 3-wood. And to John's point of the waiter looking where they're walking, they lose sight of what they're trying to do. Suddenly it becomes less about making par and more about making a better golf swing. And they get anxious because they're worried if they don't do something to make a better motion, they'll make another bad motion. And they ultimately end up that's exactly what they ultimately end up doing. And then the cycle just gets worse and worse and worse. And so my suggestion to you would be keep your eyes on the prize, if you will, on what you're trying to accomplish, which is trying to get it in the hole. It doesn't really matter how. Golf is not an art contest; it's a math problem, right?
Right.
And so if you can get you can keep yourself out of the mud of how I hit this particular golf shot relative to what I thought I was supposed to do, then you'll have a lot less anxiety. And so that would be my piece of advice.
Again, well said, Brandon. Thank you. John, some anxious people out there. I know we all work with them, myself included. They got anxiety about maybe their tournament that they're coming in, the club championship, and we got to help them out. What can we do?
Totally agree with Brandon with the word react. You're reacting, and golf is not a reaction sport. It's an action sport. So when you look at the thespians and all the great actors of Hollywood, what do? They rehearse. They put themselves in the position of being anxious, of being nervous, of rehearsing what they're being called upon to do. So when the director says, action, it's their turn to hit the shot, they're ready to go. So you gotta put yourself in the moment a little bit more often. You've got to practice that a little bit more often, whether it's on the range or on the golf course. And the other thing, the second thing I'd add to this, I get in trouble saying this phrase a lot, but it's true. It could be worse. Think about it. It's golf. It's fun. It's a game. It could be a whole lot worse. Let's put it in perspective here.
Right.
If you are reacting and you're not practicing in the heat of the moment, expectation. You're expecting all this to happen. I have a phrase: expectation leads to one thing and one thing only: failure, because it's a goal that you have no plan to reach. So you're just sort of sitting back going, well, why isn't this happening? And then you do get stuck in the muck, per se, like Brendan was saying, of how do I hit this perfect shot to get to recover versus keeping par in play. And par isn't necessarily 5 for Brandon on that hole. Maybe his personal par that day, due to an injury or he had a really tough day at work, is 6. If he keeps that in mind, all of a sudden, say again?
I said easy. Don't be knocking. I can still scrape a 5 now.
No, I'm not knocking. Brandon's par should be 4 on that hole. So
there we go.
But keep your personal par in there, and just realize, it could be a whole lot worse. You could be 6 feet under. Let's not explode this out of proportion here. A, you're reacting. B, what have you done to prepare yourself so you're not reacting, but you're acting? And I think if you can put yourself in those kinds of positions during your practice time, more often than just trying to be a ball striker, you're going to play better golf.
Yeah. Well said, guys, both of you. Guys, I want to thank you for coming on again, Coach's Corner. I enjoyed it. One of the things I'm I guess gearing up for into the new year, as we're just propelling quite fast through this year, but is really sort of stepping outside of the box a little bit in some of the conversations that we had. Earlier on, when I first started Coach's Corner, of course, I had some questions coming in that, but one of the problems is, after a while they become a little bit generic. And I really wanted to get into, some people might be going, well, that's a little bit deep conversation and, how's it helping my golf game? But the truth of the matter is it's not all about swing mechanics. It's not all about ball contact. There's other areas as well that have to be discussed and have to be understood. And as golf professionals and golf coaches, we have to be willing to have some of these conversations, with our students and with our players, for them to really understand. And as John and Brand, both of you pointed out, we want you to have fun when you go out there. And if you're, sort of all bollocksed up in your mind about not, having that perfect golf swing out there, and Brandon, you had a great example there just a moment ago. You went out there and played with your partner there, and managed to salvage par after hitting some not less than perfect golf shots. And despite your partner hitting some great golf shots, you both walked away with the same score. So, you don't have to be perfect out on the golf course. You're going to have some bad swings here and there, or some bad results in your golf shot. But the bottom line is it's how you score at the end of the day is really what's important. And obviously you want to have fun. And the more fun that you have, I think the better you're going to score and the less anxiety that you're going to have as well. Again, guys, thank you very much for coming on. We're going to get even into more in-depth conversations as we navigate the Coach's Corners in the next few months, and particularly in the new year. We're really going to get into some a little higher learning, if you will, for our students out there, for those that have been asking for it. So, Brandon and John, thank you again for coming on tonight. Keep doing the great things that you guys are doing, and I look forward to having you guys back. John, real quick, how can the folks reach out for those that want to get in touch with you?
JohnHughesGolf.com or John at JohnHughesGolf.com. Email me. Be more than happy to help anybody out. Perfect.
Brandon, you as well?
Yeah, bsgolf.com. No pun intended. That stands for Brandon Stooksbury, not the other BS. bsgolf.com. You can get me there. And then just StooksburyGolf@gmail.com. It's a little funny last name, but you just type in Stooksbury Golf in Google and it'll get you all you need.
Perfect. Guys, again, thank you very much for joining me on the Coach's Corner. As always, it's a pleasure and an honor to have some great professionals on here with me. So until next time, enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, Ted.
John, Ted, thanks, man. It was fun.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Okay, that was my very special guest on the Coach's Corner panel. John Hughes, of course, PGA Master Professional, and Brandon Stooksbury, the Director of Instruction at the prestigious Idle Hour Club in Macon, Georgia. Two great professionals. Always fun to have them on here. But we're moving right along here. As I mentioned, I have a very special guest. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him in just a moment or two. I want to do something a little bit different tonight on the show, and actually we're going to be doing it this week and next week as well, and I'll tell you again real quickly about that. I've invited sort of what I would classify as an outsider to the golf industry, even though he's working diligently, to help many people in the golf industry. He's not a golf professional. He's not a teach professional or even a club professional. He's an entrepreneur, businessman for many, many years, worked in other industries, but he's taken that knowledge, that vast experience that he's gathered over the years, and has sort of put it in place. And we're going to talk about here in part one of tonight's show with my special guest. We're going to talk about the 7 tips to grow your golf business. So even though this is for everybody, we're going to be focusing on many of you in the golf business, whether you're a club owner, teacher professional, or business owner in the golf industry. We're going to be talking about some of the tips to help grow your business. And then part 2 next week, which is the 15th, of course, next Thursday, we're going to talk about people and relationship building tips that you can use and develop as well for your business. So 2 great series, if you will. And my special guest, Peter Willis, who is the president and founder of his company, the Willis Organization, is here to join me here, and he's just waiting in the wings. So let me just tell you a little bit about his background so you have an idea, a better understanding of who he is and why he's coming on tonight. Peter works with business owners and businesses in the golf industry to help them improve their overall sales performance. His mission is to support and help individuals and teams achieve their personal and business goals and grow the game at the same time. He achieves this mission as president and founder of the company, the Willis organization, as I mentioned. And over the past 25 years, Peter has worked with a wide range of clients, entrepreneurial businesses, startups, individuals, and larger companies such as Konica Minolta, Shell Oil, Motorola, Philips, Sharp, and Herman Miller. But before establishing the Willis organization, Peter had, as I mentioned, a varied career. Began selling career while in public education, but quickly moved to the corporate world, first with Xerox, and then later with Lanier, and then PricewaterhouseCoopers. There he held a number of sales and operational management, marketing, and training positions, gaining the experience needed to strike out on his own business, of course, the Willis organization. Because Peter believes so strongly that increasing sales is key to business growth and improved performance, he and his team recently created and introduced a new online product, which we'll talk about as well, called Go for the Green Selling Challenge. We'll talk a little bit about that in a little while. It links the fun of golf to selling in a whole new way. With the challenge, users learn and improve their selling skills in practice. Then they can head off to play and test their selling skills on a virtual golf course. And I'll tell you how you can get in touch with Peter if you want to learn more information about that as well. But in the meantime, let me welcome my very special guest, Mr. Peter Willis. Good evening, Peter.
Hi, Ted. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Well, thanks very much, and it's great to be here, and thanks so much for having me on the show. It looks like I'm in great company tonight. Your previous guests, John and Brandon, are a couple of real pros, and I enjoyed hearing their messages because their messages on coaching relate to a lot of the things that I do. And I guess because, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, as you said in your kind introduction, which I appreciated, because selling and promoting are so important to growing our golf businesses, it's really a treat for me to be looking along with you at 7 tips that we can use to increase sales to grow our golf businesses tonight, and, of course, on next week's show. And as you know, Ted, and we've talked before, speaking of selling, I always enjoy working with you because you and I share a lot of common beliefs about selling. And as you know, it's my big love. And here are 3 of them. First, no matter what our job title is or what we do, we're all in the selling game.
Right.
And second, nothing really happens in our business until someone sells something.
Right.
And thirdly, that's usually the case. And thirdly, selling is all about us being excited and getting people that we're selling excited and then working to build relationships with them. And I know that you share a lot of these same beliefs with me about selling and promoting, and you've applied them and done a wonderful job of using them to help and serve your audiences in the industry. Now, the tips we're going to talk about tonight and are really quick and simple and easy to understand. And they all work together, just like the components of our golf game. And best of all, I'm hopeful that your users can put them to work right away in their businesses.
Exactly.
Yeah, we want them to be practical. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and the purpose of this, and I just want to sort of preface this a little bit again, if I can, for those tuning into the show.
Do.
I don't want them to misunderstand. We're not here to sell you something. The idea of Peter and I's discussion tonight is, I don't care how long you've been in business. There's always an opportunity to learn or relearn some simple skills to be able to grow. And one of the reasons, Peter, I really wanted you on the show, and I know we had many conversations leading up to tonight about this, and I know, and I'm going to be quite honest with everybody, I know at first you had a little bit of concern because you weren't sure whether or not this was going to be a good fit for this particular program, because obviously we're talking golf a lot. But one of the reasons I wanted you on one of the reasons I wanted you on the show tonight, Peter, is this. And as we've in our discussions had, in the golf industry, one of the issues that's really happened, especially with the economy that it's the way it's been over the last 10 or so years, a lot of courses out there have struggled and have really gotten to the point where some of them, unfortunately, are no longer with us. But many, what they've done is they've sort of given away the store. They've forgotten sort of the principles that are involved in selling consumers, and what they've done is sort of gone to a slash and and the prices and sort of giving away the shop, if you will, and sort of reduce their bottom line, and as a result have not been successful. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to get an outsider. I didn't want to get somebody from the golf industry per se. I wanted to get an outsider that's got a lot of sales experience, that's worked obviously with major accounts and to be able to talk about some of these things. So I want us to sort of jump in here because I've got limited time to talk about this tonight, and I want to get into a little bit more bones, if you will, about these 7 tips. So I'm going to start off, Peter, and just sort of spoon feed you some of the tips here, and then let you sort of get into a little bit more detail. Obviously, our tip number 1 is there's 3 P's for business performance: preparation, planning, and people determine success of your business. I want you to sort of go through each of them, Peter, and just tell a little bit about why those 3 P's are important.
Great. Okay. Well, all 3 of them work closely together, and they really come before any real sales activity or interaction begins, Ted. And to explain them, I always like to put some fun in them and link them, obviously, to golf. And that really makes them easy to remember. If you start with preparation, of course, in golf, once we're at the course and we're getting ready to play, most of us really do some loosening up and some quick stretching, then head off to the driving range and the putting green to get prepared. And really, it's the same with selling. We can get prepared for selling action ahead of time. And the way we do that is to create a quick checklist to make sure we've got all our data and all our information ready that we're going to need to interact with the person we'll be talking to. Mm-hmm. And with planning, it's kind of similar. With planning, when you arrive at the course, whether we've played it before or we haven't, we'll want to have a plan or what I call a course strategy on how we are going to play it. And it's the same with selling. We're going to need a plan for every sales interaction. And I know, Ted, that sounds simple, and it really is, if we remember that our plan will often require adjustment and change because of what happens in the sales interaction. It's kind of like reacting to unpredictable weather on the course. They kind of fit the same way.
Right, and also we have to have a willingness to adjust on how the golf industry, of course, is forever changing, like many other industries, and that's why Absolutely. Planning. It's not just preparing for now, but it's also preparing for future as well.
Absolutely true, and I've always found that one of the huge benefits of being prepared with a plan is it builds our confidence level immensely. I know that in my own selling activity, there's always a direct relationship between the results that I get and the preparation and the planning that I've done beforehand.
Right, exactly, and it's the same thing in golf. As you pointed out a moment ago, if you've played the golf course before, you're familiar with some of the lies or the lay of the land, if you will. But it's always good to prepare. It's always good to prepare ahead of time, but it's also good to plan even when you get there. Decide how you want to play the course. Factor in where some of the trouble is. I mean, you don't want to focus on the trouble too much, but you want to have an understanding of where it is. So if you have a few minutes before, you want to make a plan, make a game plan of how you're going to handle yourself out on the golf course. And by doing so, that's going to boost your confidence. And the same thing applies for those of you in business, as you pointed out as well, Peter, is you want to be able to better prepare and plan your golf course for new clients coming in. You want to have sort of a game plan for that as well, and how to draw more business in. As I pointed out earlier, one of the biggest mistakes, Peter, I think, is that a lot of the golf courses, in order to drum up business, and there's no problem in having, a situation where you might want to give some discounts here and there, but if you're continually discounting everything in the pro shop and the golf course, the green fees and things like that, you're not going to make money to be able to stay in the operation. And that's something where good planning and preparation go hand in hand. Exactly. And also there's people. The third P is people.
There sure is. You bet. Well, people is really what selling and golf are all about. Golf is really so personal that working with and through people is how we really grow our businesses. And as you know, Ted, we'll be talking a whole lot more about this one next week in part 2.
Right.
Let's move on to tip 2 if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm exactly ready. Grab your goals is tip number 2. Why we need them. Why do we need goals?
Well, you might be surprised. I'll kind of provide an answer in an indirect way, but you'll probably be surprised if I were to tell you and your audience that more than half the business people I coach and train out there have absolutely no answer when I ask them what they want to accomplish in a given sales interaction. And
right.
I think that's really the real purpose behind having a meaningful goal. And if you don't have one, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how you can get around all of this. And really, before we pick up the phone or we send out an email or a text or we head out to meet with someone personally, we're going to need to take a few minutes to really set a specific goal or target for what we want to accomplish. And really, goals are quite different. And the goals are different depending on who we're talking to. Taking this back
right.
to the people side. With our banker, for example, who we all love, particularly when he loves us, our goal will be demonstrating a positive return on all the dollars that he's invested in our businesses. And more appropriately, with golfers, it's probably our goal is going to be selling the quality, the features that are unique, and the challenges that are unique to the course. So really, goals are super important, and what they really do, as we're all aware, is they really keep us in a sales interaction focused and on track, so we can go about achieving the goal that we've set. And when we've got a goal, I always feel that we've really got ourselves a benchmark for how we did in that sales interaction. And I guess more appropriately, what we need to do next.
Right. And there's a lot of programs out there now. There's some great computer programs out there that can help by monetizing and following up on sales and things like that. Even in a pro shop, of course, you can monitor and see what's selling in your pro shop as an example. And you can obviously monitor the number of players that are coming in, playing the golf course week in, week out, day in, day out. So you can have a sort of a gauge when your peak times are. But I think a lot of people still have a difficult time in setting their goals. So let's talk about setting the goals quickly here if we can, but also why and how goals differ for obviously golf and business. How do they differ, and what should sort of be the mindset for those in the golf industry, particularly setting those goals? What do they need to be thinking? What are the things that you've taught some of your business professionals out there you're working with, what they should be thinking about and saying pertaining to their golf business?
Well, I think that goals really relate to results that we want to achieve. And whether we're trying to improve the skills of our golf game and score better, or whether we're trying to improve our sales record and make it better through performance, I really think that it all centers around, when we start talking about goals, we're really talking about an end result. And when we go to the golf course, obviously we're looking to strut our stuff. We're looking to score better. If we've been working with a coach,
sure,
we're gonna try to practice the things that he has been showing us in a lesson. And the guys
right.
that I've heard on your show that are so good in this coach's corner, and I'm learning like crazy about the fundamentals and some things and some great suggestions from all the folks I've listened to in your coach's corner. What they're basically saying is, we're gonna take components of your game and we're going to work with you to improve each of those components of your game or each of the skills in your game to get you a more positive result and also give you a whole lot more fun and enjoyment. I'm a big believer in you really got to enjoy what you're doing out there, whether it's selling or playing golf. You really got to enjoy it, and you really got to have fun with it. And if you're in love with either, you're going to be able to do that very naturally. And I think that's really important. Obviously, scoring is important, and end result is important in both business and also in golf. But I think what it comes down to is performance improvement, a better game, and results in both cases.
Right, exactly. Well said. And I think, too, again, just to sort of recap real quickly, one of the reasons why, Peter, I wanted to have you on the show is I think that a lot of, particularly people in the golf industry, have focused a lot of their efforts and energy over the last several years on the technology side of golf. In other words, having the latest gadgets in their teaching facilities and coaching facilities.
Yes.
And really focusing on the swing mechanics and things like that. And I think they're starting to realize that not everybody out there cares about the numbers. Not everybody out there is looking for the perfect golf swing. They just want to get out there and be able to play better and have more fun while doing that. So, we need to sort of re-educate, I think, and we're certainly not going to do everybody all at once, but I think there needs to be re-education of why they're there. I mean, they're there to certainly help the golfers out there to have fun, but they're also out there to grow their businesses. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted you on here, somebody that's that isn't coming in with a biased opinion. You're coming out there with a lot of industry, certainly knowledge in golf business, but at the same time, you're coming with outside knowledge as well. I think is important and key for some of our listeners out there tonight.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. There's no greater environment to do business than on the golf course, because you've got full attention for 4 hours or thereabouts, probably a lunch in there or whatever. You've got full and complete attention of whoever it is you are playing with and hoping to do business with. It's uninterrupted, and it is way above and beyond what it would typically be in a more traditional selling environment or business environment. The other thing that I think is really important is you've got your customer in a relaxed frame of mind. You're out there, there's nothing nicer than a sunny day out on the green, enjoying the elements and enjoying playing. And this is a great, not only is the environment right, but his temperament is right too when you've got him on the golf course. You've got his undivided attention, he's relaxed, he's enjoying himself, he's having fun, he's in the right kind of environment. And I'll tell you, there's nothing better than having that set of circumstances going for you in any selling situation.
And we talked about this, Peter, you and I, off air in some of our conversations. And we're going to get into certainly more of it. This is an area that we're going to get into more next week, I think, when we talk about relationships and people in general, because it's not just applicable to the people in the golf profession. We're also talking about some of the entrepreneurs out there, other executives and that certainly want to use golf as a business tool. Some of them have been doing it for years. Some are just sort of new to the game and want to know how they can sort of capitalize on that. And one of the things that you just pointed out is, in most sales calls, you're lucky if you've got 15, 20 minutes. Here you've got an opportunity to have them, and that's if you're real lucky. I mean, if you're lucky sometimes you can get past the receptionist. Exactly. But, you want to be able to have an opportunity, and golf allows you to do that. Allows you an opportunity, as you said, to have their undivided attention for at least 4 hours, depending on the circumstance, and as you said, maybe navigate into a lunch as well, so you could have them for even longer. This is a great opportunity for a couple of reasons. Number one, you've got them for a much longer period of time. You're not only able to get a sense and a feel for that individual, how they handle pressure situations. It gives you an opportunity, much like reading a green, reading your potential customer, seeing how they handle certain situations, how they handle pressure, whether there's somebody that is calm and relaxed and may be receptive to what you've. I think, Peter, let me just digress here for a second. I think one of the biggest mistakes and missed opportunities that I think a lot of business people fail to understand, the golf course is not a place to engage in high-pressure sales tactics. A lot of times what I see, people get out on the golf course and right away they're trying to sell their product or service. out there, and we're going to get into again a little bit more meat and potatoes, if you will, next week in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to emphasize that because that's something that I think we've probably both seen out there. This is an opportunity out in the golf course for the club professional that's maybe taking some clients out there on the golf course, working them to sort of use that opportunity to be able to get a better feel for their customer. What they like, what they don't like, how they react under certain situations. So they can make, I guess, a game plan, if you will, on how they want to handle that. Some you can be a little bit more aggressive. Some you have to back off a little bit. So this is where, setting some goals of what you want to do and having an understanding of the differences in goals, and we're going to move into tip 3 here as well, is knowing what the right questions to ask. So what are some of the questions that we need to be asking?
A lot of people ask. Sure, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
A lot of people ask, what are right questions, and
right.
I suppose that really depends on what our goal is in the interaction. For example, if our goal is business expansion, we're going to want to ask questions of our customers and our suppliers, and probably our advisors, to get new ideas and opportunities for growing our business from all of them. If our goal is selling lessons, for example, the right questions there are those that'll get us all the information we need to grab our goal, if you will, from before. So they'll focus around what specific skills the golfer is really looking to improve. So really, the right questions are the ones that match the need that you are trying to fulfill. And I think that's universal, whether it's, as I said in the examples, whether it's business expansion or it's selling lessons or coaching. Our questions are going to really vary depending on what that goal is, and more importantly, who we're talking to. When you were talking about the golf course, I've always been of the opinion that it's hard to sell somebody when you don't really know them. And we're going to talk a lot about this next week, but you really have to understand what I call the anatomy of who you're playing with and who you're attempting to sell. And if you can get inside that, I've always felt that if you can get to know them, and I mean really get to know them as people, you can sell. If the opposite is very challenging. If you haven't spent the time or the effort to try to get to know your prospective customer or buyer on his terms as a person, personally, which is the big advantage of golf because it's so personal when you're out there, you may experience some difficulty. So I also think that when we're talking about right questions, there is a way in which you can ask questions effectively. And once again, I said earlier that all of these ideas we're talking about tonight are linked together. And in this instance, you're going to work on that planning piece we were talking about a little earlier. You're going to want to plan most of your questions, if you can, in advance. But as we said earlier, Ted, like everything else, you got to really be alert and stay flexible. You also said, and I totally agree with you, things are changing so rapidly in the golf industry, and things change so quickly when you start interacting with people. You really got to be alert to react to the changes. And if you are, you're going to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that develop from those changes that you explore with a potential customer.
Right. I think some of the questions. Sorry, go ahead. No, finish the thought, and then I want to chime in.
Well, I think the other thing that's really important too. We all know that attention spans today are incredibly short. So it's always wise when you're asking the right questions to keep them just as simple and as straightforward as you can. Yeah,
and you're exactly right. Just 2 points I want to make, Peter, just on what we've been talking about here. First and foremost, going back to asking the right questions. I think one thing that you have to, especially if you have an opportunity when you're out in a golf course with some prospective clients, you want to avoid, certainly in most cases, you want to avoid yes or no answers. because it doesn't give you much information. One of the biggest mistakes that you can do is ask a customer or a potential customer a question that solicits either a yes or no, because then you have to come up with some follow-up questions, and you want to be able to get them talking. You want to engage them in a conversation so that they're going to be able to give you more information that then you can use later on when you're making your assessments. I want to make a very critical point here to something that you said, asking a number of sources. That's extremely important because I think that people, again, some of the professionals or even some of the entrepreneurs out there in the golf business missed the boat on this one, and I'll explain to you why, Peter, here in just a moment. But I think a lot of them have become so ingrained and they talked about this in the Coach's Corner, sort of in a comfort zone, if you will. They're comfortable doing things the way they have, and they're very afraid of change. One of the reasons why I think it's, and Peter, I'm sure you would agree, why it's important to ask a number of different sources and solicit different people, not just your customers, but suppliers, other golf experts that are out there, people within your network, and obviously some advisors out there, is it gives you a different perspective. It might be the same topic, but it gives you some different perspective. Now, that doesn't mean you have to follow every one, but you need to have that input. And I do that with the show all the time. That's one of the reasons why I reach out to a wide variety of people, both men and women in the golf industry, new to the business, and those seasoned professionals like John and Brandon tonight, and others, Clint, I mentioned earlier in the show as well, because I want their perspective. I don't want to just go to my students and say, okay, well, here's what Ted has to say, and you need to follow what I have to say all the time. I learn from others in the business, other experts out there in the field. And by doing that, by soliciting their bits and pieces of information, I can better form some better resolutions that are going to help me attract new business, of course, attract new audience and listeners. And so I need to not miss that opportunity, if you will. And I think there's some people out there that have sort of gone down that path for a while. And that's, again, one of the other reasons why I wanted you on here tonight.
Boy, I'll tell you, I spend a lot of time at my business asking customers and suppliers and my advisors for new. I drive them crazy, to tell you the truth. I've had my advisors say, "Do you ever shut up?" And I think that this is really important because these folks bring the objectivity to my business that I don't have. I'm too close to it, and I'm sure a lot of the business folks out there feel the same way. We get too close to our businesses. We can't see it objectively the way our customers do, our suppliers and our advisors do. So I totally agree, Ted, with what you're saying. That objectivity piece is very, very important. I've never been someone who wouldn't seek answers from people who potentially have more knowledge than I do. I don't have. I'm sure a lot of business folks out there, whether they're owner operators or whether they have they're part of a team in a business. We can be learning from these folks, and they're going to bring their objectivity, and equally important, they're going to bring new, fresh ideas about opportunities for growing our business if we just give them the opportunity. The other thing I'll say quickly too is that they want to help. These folks who we're going to tap into, they want to help you. And as a matter of fact, oftentimes they're flattered by the fact that you would actually ask them for their ideas and their help. Right, exactly. And also, too, Peter, I think, as you pointed out earlier, by talking to different individuals like that and soliciting their opinions and their advice is going to help you focus on your business direction. Because as I pointed out earlier as well, I think that if you're too busy kind of going in one direction all the time and not sort of adhering to the changes that are going on around you, then by the time you do realize you're so well ingrained in this philosophy over here that you've missed the boat over here and potentially lost some sales and lost some future business. Definitely can happen. That goes into tip number 4, which is to listen. Obviously, number 1, to learn from that information, and then how do we apply it. So obviously, we should understand, rather, as a better way to phrase it,
we should understand the importance of listening to our customers, whether you're in the golf industry or out. Let's talk a little bit about on tip number 4. Number 1, why
Sure.
listening is important, when we learn from that, and then how we apply it.
Well, I think we tend to minimize listening as an important skill. We take the position sometimes that, after all, we've been listening all our lives, so what's there to know? But listening
Right.
is extremely important to growing our businesses and to selling. And so it is a skill that we need to spend time on, dedicated time on. And why is that? Well, listening to the answers to our questions gives us the facts and information we need to move ahead. It's really curious to me that the advice I get from sales experts is that in an ideal sales interaction or business interaction, there should be 80% listening and only 20% talking. That's pretty difficult for a guy like me, as you know, Ted.
Right.
It's the exact reverse of what comes naturally for most of us. And to turn this around, because it is a fact of life, the trick is really to work to slow your mind down, to really focus in on and listen actively with full attention to every answer that you're being given. And I'll be the first to admit, this takes a ton of practice.
Yes.
And I guess when you talk about listening, I think the real takeaway is that, and I think you were touching on this earlier, and I wanted to come back to it. The more we can get our customers and our potential customers talking by asking the right questions and then listening closely for their answers, the more we're going to learn. And that's why I call this tip listen, learn, and apply. And then the third step, which is really important for business growth, is once we're armed with all we've learned, we can select and apply the information that works best to grow our business and to make the sale. And this listening skill will really work for everyone, whether we're selling lessons, we're selling equipment, memberships, tournaments. That they'll work for everybody, and they are the ability to listen and really pay attention is phenomenally important. I always like to listen and watch David Faraday on the Golf Channel, and you can say what you want. You can say what you want about David, but I got to say his questioning and listening skills are a joy to watch. Faraday, first of all, espouses what we've been talking about: preparation, planning, having a goal for what he wants to achieve with his guest, asking the right questions. And David's a master at it. His questioning skill, and by the way, I'm not David's agent. His questioning skill is a joy to watch. I wish I were. Anyway, he asks the question of his guest, then he patiently waits for the answer. After he gets the answer, he reacts to the answer, often humorously, but he reacts to it. And then he moves right away on to the next question. He's really a master of this, all of what we're talking about here, which is asking the right questions and then really paying attention and listening and learning from the answers, and then going out and applying those answers to your business in the most effective way. Right, and you're exactly right about Faraday. He is certainly a master in that area. I want to just going back to the listening part here. Something just sort of a takeaway from what we talked about in Coach's Corner earlier tonight. When I was talking about the teaching and learning aspect from a coach's perspective, and the principles, the second principle under there was students must be willing to change. They must be willing to make these changes that we're trying to incorporate. And one of the sort of the do's and don'ts, if you will, that sometimes the pros do, is that they don't ask the question, are you willing to make some of these changes we're discussing here today in the lesson? And quite often they will sort of insist that these students make the change. And that's sort of a no-no in selling as well. This is why it's important that we have to listen to our customers, because if we sort of just bulldoze our way along, we're not really meeting the needs of the customer. We're sort of enforcing or imposing our needs and will, if you phrase it that way.
to the customer, and more often than not, we're going to lose the sale and potentially lose a customer in the long run. So this is why listening is important, and I think there's a lot of people out there that really need to take heed to this area, this particular tip, because there are a lot out there that don't listen, and I've come across them, and I'm sure you have as well, Peter, that don't want to listen.
Sure, we're all guilty of it, Ted. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so I really want to emphasize that we have to listen. I even find myself sometimes on the show I've got to shut up and let the guest, which I'm going to do right now, and let you expand on that a little bit. But you understand what I'm talking about. I think that that's a key area, a key tip if you want to be successful in selling, regardless of whether you're in the golf industry or out of the golf industry. And Peter, go ahead.
Definitely agree. And I think, as I said earlier, Ted, we tend to minimize it. We tend to think that, oh yeah, everybody, we've been listening all our lives, so what's there really to know here? But by listening carefully and focusing in on what you're being told, it's a learning experience. And we've been talking a lot about learning about our potential customers and learning about people we can sell. And we're going to get into this next show. But I think that we by listening carefully, we get a potential customer or a customer on side with us from a personal standpoint. And we're going to the personal element of this is very, very important. What we're saying to him or her is, hey, your message is important to me, and I'm giving it the care and the attention and the focus that you and your message deserve. And it goes right back to this understanding of people. And it really is an important part. I also don't want to minimize with listening and learning that it takes a lot of practice, and we really have to work on it. That 80-20 rule I was talking about, the closer we can get to the 80% listening, as you said, Ted, the more effective we're going to be, because we learn all about what it is. We learn the makeup of our customer, but we learn what's important to him or her, and then we're in a better position to move ahead with some positive selling activity. Right, and also too, Peter, just again to add one more thought to it. We have two ears and only one mouth, and there's a reason for that. We should be listening twice as much as we're talking. So, with that, Peter, let's move on to tip number 5, and of course, everybody wants to talk about the benefits of doing business with them. If they're a golf course, they want to talk about the golf course and some of the unique features of the golf course. Maybe they've got some interesting things that they're selling in the pro shop. There's all kinds of things. So we want to make sure that when we're selling the benefits, if you will, in tip number 5, is we want to make the customer aware of what's in it for them. What are they going to get from the experience from dealing with it? So let's touch a little bit about that if we can. Excellent. Yeah, well, selling your benefits, tip number 5 really is where we can really build excitement. I just love this part of any selling interaction, because you can really build excitement about your business, your product, your service. And boy, I'll tell you, selling the benefits is a real opportunity for us to really shine and, as you suggested, differentiate our business from the others that are out there. It's kind of obvious that when customers buy, our business will grow, and our customers, as you said, Ted, are going to buy from us based on how well we promote by showing, selling, and telling them what's in it for them. In other words, what are the benefits they'll get from dealing with us and our business? So, the fact of the matter is, what is in it for them? How about what makes our business or our product unique, or how it's different from our competition? These are things that we're going to want to cover when we're shining and we're trying to differentiate our business. What are some of the values that the customers will get when they do business with us? What are those? Let's itemize those, or have a clear idea of what they are. What are the positive experiences that they're going to enjoy when they buy from us.
Right.
And really, these are the kinds of things that I always encourage people when I'm working with them on business growth to really think about their business in a sense that if they were the customer or they wanted to go out for goods and services, why would they want to deal with your company? And I think if we kind of reverse the role here, boy, we can really make some yards because, these are really the things that are important. And when we think about them, and perhaps going back to what we said earlier, getting some outside help and advice and thoughts on it, we can really make it happen. And I think also we're pretty lucky. You touched on this earlier, Ted. You talked about the technology tools we have out there. Well, those technology tools are all part of selling and promoting our business, and more importantly, the benefits of dealing with us in our business. That can happen in person, online, with ads, with all the boost on social media, our golf groups. And one of your favorites, and my favorites, is getting into the community, our community presence. We can sell the benefits of dealing with us from our community presence and from product shows and sponsorships. And as I said, boy, the time to be doing this is so perfect because we have unbelievable and unlimited ways that we can go and sell and promote our business. And most importantly, as we say here in Tip 5, the benefits of our business. Really when you start thinking about this, Ted, the biggest challenge we have is really choosing the ways that sell the benefits of our business best. Because we got a lot of choices because of all these channels of being able to sell and promote our benefits. And then once you've chosen the best ones for you, and that's where I say this is where the thinking and the planning and the strategy comes into play. Yourself, with your advisors, with the folks that are willing to help you, and then putting them into action with a realistic and a doable plan once you've made some choices on how you're going to present your benefits to those that you want to do business with in the best possible way.
Right. And you want to be able to, and I want to touch on something else too that you and I had talked about, again, not tonight yet on the show, but I want to bring this in because this falls right into this line. One of the, I guess the criticisms I would have that I've seen in the golf industry here over the last few years, especially down where I am, is that sort of old idea that, if I just open up my doors in the morning, they will come. Well, the problem with that is, and as you just pointed out, with all the technology and the ways of getting the word out there, and especially for golf, and I'm talking about golf courses now.
Sure.
When you're in an area like Florida or Myrtle Beach, and now certainly in other areas of the country, where you've got a high concentration of facilities within literally a stone's throw, why do they want to come to your business? Why do they want to play your golf course? Certainly people out of curiosity will go, and you can certainly do some effective advertising and marketing and things like that. But again, it goes to what you talked about, getting out in the community and having a presence. You want not just the owners of the club, but you want the golf pros, and that you want them out there in the community and in being engaging in business networking and things like that, getting people excited about wanting to come and play their course. And I think one of the mistakes that the industry has done here is they've said, okay, well, we've got 5 courses in the area, and so-and-so's green fees are this amount, their green fees are that amount. In order to draw people over here, we're going to cut prices down. And that can work if done strategically to a point. But if you're continually in a pricing war with everybody else, look at Myrtle Beach, where you've got literally hundreds of golf courses within a very short drive.
Absolutely.
What makes you stand out? And the only way that it stands out is you need to get out there and network and make people aware of what's going on. And the same thing with teach professionals. I mean, I hate to say it, but there are a dime a dozen. There's hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of great teacher professionals out there. Why do they want to come take lessons from me, or why do they want to take lessons from John or Brandon? These guys have done exactly what we're talking about here tonight. They've gone out there effectively and market and promote it, and they've got active and aggressive in their communities to attract that business, and that's why their lesson plans are booked. But there's others out there that are struggling, and it's because they're not really out there selling the benefits of why somebody wants to come and take lessons with them, or why somebody wants to come and play their facility. They're relying on some of those older methods that 20 years ago might have been applicable, but in today's economy and market, they don't apply anymore. You've got to do some of the things that we've suggested here tonight.
You bet, and that is very, very true. The personal way in which we can do this is really the key to benefit setting and building your business.
Right, exactly. And again, I'm not saying these things, Peter, because I certainly don't want to knock those in the profession. I think there's a lot of great owners and a lot of great managers out there. But I think as it goes to one of the earlier tips is, and again it goes back to the planning, is we've got to plan well and be willing to adapt when changes come around. And if we're head deep in technology and worrying about having the latest swing monitors and things like that, and again, I'm not knocking them. I think they're a vital business tool, but that's all they are, is a business tool. If we're focusing all of our efforts on one area of the business, on the technology, having the latest and greatest technology in teaching, and not really focusing on the other areas, then something's going to suffer. And this is where, again, going out and getting advice and getting people, invite groups in and let them experience the facility, and say, even if you've got
nothing better.
Invite them for free and say, look, we want you to come out here. We're gonna dedicate one day this month to inviting 20, 30 local businesses in here, business leaders in here, to maybe play a free round of golf and experience our facility. Because if they enjoy it and feel good about it, they're going to go out there and communicate that. Especially if you're a new facility, that's a great way to do that. But if you're just discounting prices all the time and giving away your business, you're going to be closing up shop really quick.
No question. And creative new ways done personally is the way to win with this one. It truly is. As you said, the social media, the tech tools are tools, but we as business owners and we as people working in businesses, we got to sell those benefits personally and use the tech tools as a helper or as a tool. And this is a time, as I said at the outset of this particular tip, this is a time where you can really think and get creative about what it is you're really doing. What is the message you want to have out there? And as you said, Ted, it's being active and being out there personally, because you're really the face. You're really the face and the owner or the manager or the team member of the business. People want to meet you. They want to see what you're all about. They want to see what your business is all about. And I think this is a whole picture of what really goes into selling your benefits. And this is one that, as I say, I have a personal affection to, because it gives you a chance to really think about what your business is and does and how you can get your selling message across with benefits.
Right. And that, of course, brings us to, comes to our next tip, tip number 6, which is get a commitment to action, which is basically closing the deal. You've sold them on the benefits. You've listened to what their concerns are, and as a club owner or as a golf professional or manager, and now it's time to get them to act and make a commitment, whether coming to play on your course or making purchases or doing business, getting that commitment. So let's touch a little bit on that.
Sure. And by now, Ted, you've invested a lot of time, a lot of effort and energy with the person you're selling. And because of that, we need to come away with a commitment to some course of action and, frankly, not be humble about asking for it. The best possible commitment, obviously, is for a customer to say, hey, I'm in. Here's my credit card. Well, yeah, wouldn't that be nice every time? It doesn't quite happen that way, as you and I both know.
Right.
We got to be realistic. Commitments really come after several smaller bite-sized chunks or smaller steps that you do over time. Once again, the takeaway here is we need to get a commitment from every interaction to some kind of action in the future that will lead to a positive buying decision. and effectively grow our business. The action, for example, can be a commitment to another meeting, a phone discussion, maybe even an email exchange of information.
Sure.
And all of these are smaller steps that lead to a buying decision down the road. And I think the real simple way to go about getting a commitment is to ask for it. Pretty simple.
Sure.
Sounds simple, and it is. You go and ask for it. And if we don't ask, we're not going to get one. Really, the final takeaway when you talk about getting a commitment to action really is it truly is essential. And the other thing I would say about getting a commitment to action in small stages, if you can't get it first off the bat, is that it can take some time. So you'll need to hang in there with this particular customer, provided you've made the judgment that this customer is worth hanging in with. And that's up to you and your business and the way you evaluate your prospects and your customers. But hang in there, because I've always felt that you deserve a reward for all of that time and effort you've invested with this customer. So that's a little bit of a ramble there on getting a commitment to action, but hopefully we've given you some ideas and some tips on how to make that happen.
Well, and Peter, just to add a little bit to that, tip number 6, getting that commitment, asking for the order, if you will, or for the is extremely important. I mean, how many times, and Peter, I'm sure you've experienced, as have I, and if we're being honest here, very early on in our career, you go through a great sales presentation, you've talked the features and benefits of the product or service that you're offering, only to either let the customer walk out of your store or to walk out of their business and not ask for the order or ask for the commitment. And the next guy that walks in, you've primed and you've readied that individual to the commitment, and your competitor walks in and closes the deal. He doesn't have to do any of the legwork. And again, I want to go back to what I talked about, how I opened up the show tonight, Peter, is the reason why I wanted to do this. We're not talking about fixing the golf swing here. That was in Coach's Corner. That's, we were talking golf more in Coach's Corner, and I've certainly talked golf in many years. The main reason I wanted you on here tonight is because I think there is a need in the golf industry to go back, just as those that are playing golf need to go back to the key fundamentals of playing better golf. I think as business leaders and business professionals, male or female, young or old, we need to go back to the fundamentals of selling, because that's really what business is all about, is selling to one another and to each other various products and services. And I think a lot of people have really, especially in the golf industry, I think there's a lot of them out there that have missed the boat, that have forgotten it. And this is a good refresher course. I think the golf industry needs this, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to bring it to this forum tonight.
Great, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about it, Ted, because I know we share a lot of the same ideas and thoughts about how important it is to get that sales component to build your business. And sometimes there's a little bit of a reluctance to get involved in this, and what I like to do with my tips is to really keep them simple. And because, really keep them simple. A lot of the ideas we've talked about tonight aren't new, but they're great reminders. And as I said earlier, they work for everyone, no matter what your business is. They work. They're universal, whether you're selling lessons or you're selling memberships or equipment. And I'm really hopeful that as a result of going through the tips, and I know that next week we're going to be talking about building relationships for today and tomorrow, because it's such a major component for increasing sales and building our golf businesses. So that we'll be tying together next week, building relationships along with that people component I was talking about earlier in the 3 Ps, and really going into them in depth, because I think you've done a great job tonight in kind of touching on the people element of this, which is one of my favorites. I'm a huge believer in people and relationships, and I use those people and relationships every day to sell more effectively in my own business. So that's my hope tonight, is that the folks out there can take a hold of these ideas. As I said, they're simple, they're straightforward, they're easy to understand, and my hope is that they can put them into place in their businesses to grow them through selling and through relationships with people.
Right, and that was a very eloquent way of putting tip number 7 together, building relationships for today and tomorrow. And as Peter just alluded to, that we're going to get into that in more depth next week, of course, in part 2 of the series. Obviously,
looking forward
we don't have
to
the
it.
time. Yeah, we don't have the time to get them both in here. There's a lot of information, and it is important because the industry, like every other industry, is changing. It's constantly evolving. There's more. It's not just here in the United States, but golf has become a global sport. There are many other
globally.
countries outside of Canada and the United States that are very aggressively getting into the golf industry. And as more and more people look to travel and look for new and exciting challenges and things to see, just because these people are doing that doesn't mean that the businesses here back home have to sort of say, well, they're going over here now, so we'll just close up shop. No, we need to retool, rethink how we're going to handle it. And again, we're not going to stop the flow of traffic going here and there, but we want to get our fair share of the consumers out there interested. And we want to grow the game. We want to get more people. There's nearly 7 billion people on the earth. But yet here in the United States, there's probably about, and the numbers have declined a little bit, about maybe 25 million golfers. That's not very many when you consider the population here in the United States is well over 300. So there's plenty of room to grow just in your own backyard, but you're not going to do that effectively if you're negating any of these tips that we've talked about here tonight, and more importantly, the relationship building tips that we're going to give you next week. So we want to make sure you come back for that. Peter, we've literally only got a few minutes left here. It's hard to believe this hour has just blown by. I want to give the folks an opportunity. Literally, it's blown by here. I want to give the opportunity to let the folks know, and we'll talk about the game, the selling challenge. We'll have to do that for next week because we don't have time tonight.
Sure.
But where can the folks get in touch with you, Peter, if they want more information? How can they reach out to you?
I'm delighted to help anyone in your audience. They can reach out to me anytime. My email is peter@mygoforthegreen.com. And our website, of course, is www.mygoforthegreen.com. So I'm very, very willing to help anyone out there that heard the tips and wants to apply them. Shoot me an email. I'd love to talk with you. As I said earlier, Ted, I'm a big believer in summing up benefits, and I better do this because people will start to wonder if I really followed through with what I said I was going to do. Here's what we talked about tonight. The 3 Ps for business performance, their preparation, planning, and people. We're going to get into people big time next week, and both Ted and I are looking forward to that. Grab your goals, ask the right questions, then listen, learn, and apply. Sell your benefits and have fun with them and get excited about them and make yourself unique and get a commitment to action. And then the next one we're going to do next week is building relationships for today and tomorrow. So really looking forward to sharing those tips with you on next Thursday's show. And it's been great. Thank you so much for the opportunity of coming out and sharing these tips with your audience, Ted. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, I appreciate it, Peter. As I said, I'm one of the things I said earlier in the program tonight on the Coach's Corner panel to the guys, Brandon and John, was that I want to get away from sort of the traditional discussions on the show that you hear in so many other programs out there where they're talking about the same golf tips all the time. I really want to get people out there thinking, understanding that there's more to golf than just having the perfect golf swing, because really the perfect golf swing doesn't exist. It's much like life. There's going to be pitfalls. There's going to be challenges that we're going to be faced with, and so one of the things that I want to do with this show is to be able to give people other perspectives to think about. And my guests that come on the show have done a great job. And Peter, you've done a fantastic job tonight, and I appreciate that. And for those of you tuning in, make sure that you come back next week and join Peter, Willis, and I as we wrap up with series number 2, which is going to talk about, as we said earlier, is going to be talking about people and relationship building tips for your business. And this can apply to any business. Obviously, we're on a golf show here. We're going to be applying it to the golf community out there, but this really applies to anybody. So whether you're in the golf profession or you're not, tune in to Golf Talk Live next Thursday at 6 to 8 p.m. Central or 7 to 9 Eastern for you on the East Coast, and make sure that you tune in and listen to the show because Peter and I have got some great tips for you as well. Peter, again, thank you very much for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live, and I will see you here next week.
You bet. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Ted.
All right. You're
Bye-bye.
welcome. Have a great night. All right. Bye-bye.
You too.
And thank you as well for joining me every week on Golf Talk Live here on blogtalkradio.com. Again, thank you for all of your thoughts and input into the program. It's really you guys that are tuning in every week that help me to make this a better show. So I'm going to keep it up. Again, thank you to my Special Coaches Corner guys, John Hughes and Brandon Stooksbury. Thanks, guys, for doing a great job. And also to my very special guest, Mr. Peter Willis, founder and president of the Willis organization. Thank you, everybody, and I will see you right here next week on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody.